managements that are to
All
blame.
right, we'll move on. Viv Huskins, a question from you, please.
Drug and alcohol deaths in Wales have increased by 31% in 10 years. Isn't it about time we follow Scotland's minimum price of alcohol?
Scotland has introduced a minimum price of 50 pence a unit of alcohol, which apparently puts up the price of the cheapest vodka by about £4 a bottle, which seems to be the main effect of it, and a bit on beer and things. Should the same thing happen in Wales and indeed in England? Maria Miller.
Well, we're obviously looking at that already, and we've announced that's exactly what we'd like to do in England. But I think the more important thing is we've got to make sure that people are aware of the real health impacts of binge drinking. Nowadays there are too many people who seem to not be aware of the long-term health consequences that can result from drinking too much, even just too much social drinking. And I think we have to make sure that people are really aware of it. Why? Because of the consequences to our public health service. And when you go into an A&E on a Friday night or a Saturday night, the number of people who are in there as a result of an injury or a problem that's related to alcohol really shows to me that this is putting a huge burden onto our health service as well.
Why would it have gone up by 30% in 10 years?
Well, I think that probably we're recording it more accurately now, but also I think people are perhaps have more access, and I think this is why looking at the pricing of alcohol is important. But I think that's only one step in a much bigger programme to make sure people really are aware of the really powerful effect that these sorts of addictions can have on people's lives, and indeed the sort of effect they can have on people's ability to get into employment as well.
And when are you going to do it? You said you proposed it, but when are you going to do it in England and Wales?
Well, I think that's something that we're looking at the moment, and I think we'll...
I know, but when do you think it'll be decided?
I think as soon as we've got something which is going to work for all parts of the country.
Peter Hain, do you think it's right and fair and proper thing to do?
Well, I think it's useful to look at what's happening in Scotland and what the results are, and if it is as clear-cut as increasing the price produces a reduction in, for example, young people getting tanked up at home on six-packs and strong cider and then going out to clubbing or to the pub. But, you know, I think in the end what you need to do is I don't think you're going to solve these problems unless you encourage people to be aware, take control of their own health. That is, in the end, the solution to these problems. I don't think that the minimum price level is going to solve it on its own. I'll just make one other point. The advantage of devolution is you can look at what happens elsewhere in Britain. We had the Older Persons Commissioner in Wales first. We had the Children's Commissioner first. We had free bus passes for pensioners first. Those policies were followed elsewhere in Britain. If the Scottish case works well, then I think there's a case for doing it here.
Leon Wood.
Well, there is a chronic alcohol problem in Scotland. It isn't as bad, fortunately, in Wales, so something had to be done to try and address that. And I know that the SNP government would have preferred to have addressed this by using excise duty and powers over taxation, and that would have been a better way to deal with it, I think. But I think what we've got to recognise is that as people's economic problems get worse, the likelihood of these sorts of statistics getting worse grows, and there needs to be some sort of plan and strategy for dealing with that. And I know that I worked as a probation officer...
Sorry, if people are poor, are you saying you put up the price of alcohol and it'll help solve the problem?
Well,
You say their economic problems get worse?
As economic problems get worse, people are more likely to develop addictive behaviours. And I'm aware of that because of my previous experience. I worked as a probation officer before I was elected to the National Assembly. And I know that problems in the valleys that were caused after the pit closure programme in the 1980s, there was a layer of people who ended up dependent on heroin, and there's a serious problem still with that. And there's always a danger that when economic times are difficult, people will seek to escape those problems.
So do you favour using the price mechanism as a way of preventing that happening?
Yes, I think that's one way of doing it, but I think you need to look wider at that than that as well.
But it's one way you would approve of?
Yes. Alcohol is one problem. Other substances are problems as well, and there needs to be an overall plan and strategy for dealing with what is going to be a growing problem, I think.
You sit in the front.
Surely, though, unless there's a massive cultural shift, this won't change, because there's going to be people who are going to find other ways to get around like the expensive prices. Because I went to Estonia a couple of years ago, and the Finnish people were getting the ferry over to Estonia to take bottles and cans all the way back over to their home country. People are just going to find other ways to get around this.
What worries me is if other substances become cheaper and people opt to use other substances instead. That's a concern, I think.
Okay, you, sir. The man here. And I come to you.
Yeah. Let's look at the bare facts here. As an 18-year-old, we wait for the weekends, we party, and alcohol is a part of our lifestyle. Raising the price isn't really going to solve that, because we're just going to, you know, save up more and pay for that. I think solving the problem is with the cultural side of it, and what we actually think of what we do with it, how we use it, and how it affects our future. Education in alcohol is how we solve this problem.
I agree with you.
I'm someone who likes to drink, and but I've got to the age where I feel a bit old for binge drinking, really. I think if I sort of had a whole bottle of tequila, I just want to go to sleep. I don't get really drunk, I just get really sleepy. And it doesn't take much alcohol to make you feel, you know, pleasurably relaxed. And a couple of pints should be sufficient for anyone. So the idea of this whole cultural thing that the gentleman referred to about front-loading and getting really drunk before you go down to a party or the pub is something we do have to attack. But I am in favour of hiking the prices in the supermarkets, in the places where alcohol is too cheap. I think it should be the same to buy a pint of beer in the supermarket that is in the pub, and that would save our pubs. It breaks my heart to see pubs closing around Britain. 50 a week I think we're losing. And I went past a pub the other day that used to be a pub, now it's a McDonald's. My father would be turning in his grave if he saw that. Because in a pub your drinking is monitored, there's a landlord there who says, come on, you've had enough, and it's a social thing. It's not this thing of stacking up the supermarket trolley and drinking it at home.
John is really onto something here. Our pubs are closing partly because duties ladled massively on them, and in supermarkets it's actually cheaper. I mean, the duty on pub beers has gone up about 40% in the last 3 years. No wonder that they're closing. I would actually like to see responsible drinking in pubs and, you know, ramp up the price in supermarkets, so people just couldn't get these cut price things.
So you have to go to the pub, you can't drink at home?
No, I'm not saying you can't drink at home. I just think the difference, as John was saying, is far too great.
OK. Man up there at the back with spectacles. I come to you, Kelvin.
Do you think this policy then could lead to a lot of illicit alcohol being sold and the detrimental health to the people that
illicit alcohol made at home, you mean?
Yeah, made at home, pochine.
Pochine and all that, yes.
I made that as a student. Yeah, I made some homemade whiskey once as a student.
Kelvin McKenzie.
Well, I think they should be concentrating on the health issues. I don't know whether you've seen the numbers about throat cancers and the like, which have simply gone off the dial because of excessive drinking. I'm not sure that they could price... OK, my sort of manor is London and the South East, and I'm not sure that they could price alcohol to the point where it would actually stop people from continuing to drink excessively. And on that basis, the only other way to look at this is a massive health drive sponsored by the government in that respect. And honestly, if you see the way they've successfully been done in relation to cigarette smoking, I believe that people would be bright enough to work out, I don't want to have throat cancer, I don't want to have cirrhosis of the liver, I don't want to have this. The parents could lean on the children. I mean, the truth about the matter is that the kids actually, because of guilty parents, oh, my little Tommy, giving them money so that they can go out and get plastered on Friday and Saturday night. They have got to take responsibility as well. Young people have always been drinking, but what you're starting to see it now is it's not ending at 24 or 26. This is going on to the 30s, the 40s and the 50s. So I say education is the answer, and I don't believe you could price drink heavily enough in most of this country to actually stop it, to stop excessive drinking. That's my reality.
OK.